I'm a great lover of ritual. I do see them as the formalized expression of a culture's values and beliefs.
No religion and no community I can live without ritual, and not only because it expresses and orders life, but because without these markers, you simply disappear. Other liberal Jews and secular Jews feel many of these rituals no longer speak to them.
A ritual helps to craft a meaningful life, or to craft life as a work of art.
I'm an Orthodox Jew in part because I feel that every ritual of the past either still speaks to me, or if it does not, it still has a call upon me and is still worth trying to make meaningful. And even those things that are not practiced literally can't be practiced. I learn from them and they are part of my memory.
When Jewish people recite their blessings over the candles, they are giving thanks to God, the creator of light. The rituals and holidays of the Jewish year define the Jewish sense of time. The central aim of Jewish time and ritual is to bind the Jewish people to their God and to create a community aware of its traditions. Traditions like putting on tefillin during the regular morning prayer service. Tefillin consist of 2 tiny boxes containing 4 sets of biblical verses commemorating the birth of Jewish law at Mount Sinai. Today, many modern Jews no longer perform this ritual. Celebration, community, family, and living by the rhythms of the Jewish calendar have kept Judaism alive for over 3,000 years. This was especially the case during the exile from their homeland, when the Jewish people had only time-honored religious rituals to keep them together as a people.
Jews sought holiness in time rather than space, because ours was a portable homeland, because we were so often migrating from one country to another, and because time is democratic. Time is accessible to everyone. We formed cathedrals in time rather than cathedrals out of stone. Turning Friday night and Saturday into Shabbat was a human act of doing what God does, sanctifying a day. Taking a day out of the calendar, taking a week out of the calendar, was a way of taking time which is value-free and imposing our values on it, finding the holiness in it. It would teach us the preciousness, the potential sanctity of time.
Jewish time is one of the great rhythms that has kept the Jewish people together from time immemorial. One knows, even in the course of a day, sunrise is time for morning prayers, sundown is time for evening prayers, when stars come out in the sky, it's time for the night prayers. And then we have the rhythms of the holidays. And each season, each month brings its own memories, its own experiences, its own preparations. So we kind of put ourselves in a psychological mood by the calendar. The calendar kind of prepares us for how we face that particular day, week, month, and year.
Every Friday night, observant Jews light the Sabbath candles. The Sabbath is a reenactment of the 7th day of creation, described in the Torah as a holy day of rest.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, אשר קידשנו במצוותו וציוונו לקראת בפניה של שבת. אמן. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat, as it's traditionally understood, is you release yourself from technology, you release yourself from control over the earth. You're not allowed to turn on a light, drive a car. You're not allowed to garden, water the garden. You're not allowed to cut things. You're not allowed to write. You're not allowed to create. The better to understand that God is the creator. It's the exemplary, quintessential example of what Judaism is. You take an idea, you didn't make yourself. You didn't make the world. How are you going to make that an internal part of how you think?
I didn't not drive or not answer the phone, but one day I just stopped working, meaning work related to work. But I would still watch TV and drive and go shopping and so on. After a while, it didn't feel right. It was ruining my Sabbath to do those things. So it wasn't like I said, oh, I really want to go shopping and drive and listen to music, and I can't. Actually, I didn't want to do those things. The Sabbath became an island in time, a special refuge. My whole week, my family, we look forward to the Sabbath. My children, we know that something special is going to happen on the Sabbath. We're not going to go to work. We're not going to watch TV. So those things felt naturally good. I think it's an experiential thing. It's not a philosophy thing.
Having ended up living as a Jew over these last 7 or 8 years, having been raised Catholic, I felt a strange thing happen, which was my body clock kind of adjusted to Jewish time. And gradually, you know, instead of Christmas and Easter and so on kind of defining the way you feel rooted in the year, it was the Jewish holidays that began to take that precedence. My thinking about time in general has changed radically, primarily through Heschel, the writings of Heschel, who would write that, you know, the world is not space hurtling across time, it's time hurtling across space. And the whole idea of the definition of the Sabbath as holy because it represents a piece of time. It's not because it's the day, it's not because it's the place. It is a piece of time, and we can make time sacred. That is a revolutionary concept.
People say, well, why do I need the ritual? And my answer to that is that you need a vessel for all that spirituality. Spirituality doesn't hang in the air. Spirituality needs a vessel. And that vessel is ritual. That vessel is a timetable. Because in many ways, I think as Jews living in the modern world, we are oppressed by the calendar. The calendar is essentially a Christian calendar. Once you liberate yourself from that calendar, once you kind of start moving through the Jewish calendar, suddenly you create an environment where Judaism and spirituality naturally flows into your life. So even though we say, you know, people say, well, I can't get into all that Jewish ritual. In fact, what they're saying is, I'm a slave to Christian ritual.
The most distinctive elements of Jewish ritual are symbolic. Since biblical times, Jews have performed this ritual once a year during Sukkot, the Jewish harvest festival.
They take a palm branch and they take a citrus fruit called an etrog, and they put them together and they shake them in all 4 corners of the earth and up and down. And you're thinking about the unity of all things. You're thinking that there's a kind of connectedness to the world and it's not all random fragmentation, and you're expressing it in an act. And when you express that spiritual idea in an act, you make it holy. And that's what a mitzvah is supposed to do. That if we could take all this nice spiritual thought and we could actually put it out into action, the world changes. I change, I affect other people, the world changes.
Jewish tradition sees behavior on 2 levels. Behavior between human beings, between you and me, which is primarily ethics, and behavior between God and me. And that can only be expressed symbolically. That's where ritual comes in. I do things in order to express my love of God. It need not have ethical content and such. What it can never be is to have unethical content.
I believe that Judaism has become disproportionately associated in people's minds with ritual, so that when two Jews are speaking to each other and they'll ask, is so-and-so a religious Jew, the answer will be given based exclusively on the person's level of ritual observance, as if the ethics were an extracurricular activity. So I want ethics to be given center stage again.
There was a period in Judaism when, under the influence of modernity at that time, Judaism was reduced to ethics. Of course, it was suicidal. If I tell my child that Judaism is ethical conduct, my child will soon find out that you don't have to be Jewish to be ethical. And therefore, why be Jewish? So you have to do both. You can never be less than ethical, but you can not be only ethical in order to be a Jew.
This idea spoken throughout the prophets that ethical obligations have a higher priority than ritual obligations, I think is the fundamental point of view of liberal Judaism, of all its versions. The fundamental point of orthodoxy is that there is no difference and that both are equally required. I think that what God wants of us is ethical purity, not ritual purity. The one ritual that I think has been changed that reflects the conflict with Jewish values is the ritual of allowing women to read from the Torah. The idea that we are all made in God's image equally is a value, and it conflicts with the notion that only some of us can come read from the Torah, offer prayers, sign documents as witnesses, and that, I think, is a conflict between our rituals and our values.
I think Jewish ritual is a perfect channel for getting us closer to God, for getting us in touch with our Jewish selves. On a Friday evening, when my partner David and I light candles at home, we're actually bringing in the presence of God into our home. When we put on prayer shawls, we're saying we are under the protective wings of God. When we wear a kippah, a yarmulke, then we're saying this is part of our tradition, whether we're men or women who wear yarmulkes, and we're reminding ourselves that we're always under God's presence.
I find that there are all kinds of ways in which I want to do rituals that were always done in certain ways, the way my ancestors and my parents did it, and I feel very close to that sense of tradition and authority. But there are also always ways and venues for innovating, adding, and expanding. Simchat Habat, a birthing ceremony for little girls. We wanted our daughters to be welcomed into the Jewish community just as though we welcomed the sons.
We can invent new ritual in order to invigorate our lives, and that happens all the time as we come up against situations that we didn't have in the past. For example, in the gay and lesbian community at the moment, we're struggling with, what does gay and lesbian marriage look like? Do we use the old marriage service? Do we use parts of it? Do we reinvent it? And nobody has a firm answer yet. And so what we're getting is a really exciting and powerful discussion and invigoration of the old ritual by looking at it through new eyes.
There are many rituals we need, we don't have. Only in the last 10 years have people begun to create rituals for the beginning of menstruation and for menopause. Have people begun to create rituals for changing career and life at age 50 or thereabouts? We lived through those moments, but until very, very recently, because we didn't make any ritual, we didn't bring the community together, we didn't bring our bodies in connection with our minds, because good ritual always uses something physical as well as something intellectual and emotional. It didn't become very rich or very real. So yeah, you change jobs, but the idea that that was a sacred act and that it might connect with your birth at one end and your death at the other end of your life, forget it, because nobody had created such rituals. So I think what's happening now, thank God, is that Jews are beginning to say, look, our life cycles are much richer than they used to be. So let's really create rituals that celebrate that richness.
We begin our Seder tonight by turning to page 21.
Another of the many rituals described in the Torah is Passover.
Before us, the emblems of festive rejoicing. We gather for our sacred
Here,
celebration.
a Passover plate bears the symbolic food eaten to recall the hardships of slavery.
You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread.
This sacred holiday is celebrated in honor of the Exodus from Egypt, the journey from slavery to freedom.
Remember the day on which you went forth from Egypt, from the house of bondage, and how the Lord freed you with a mighty hand.
The Passover Seder. It occurs only once a year. It's a time for family to get together. It's a nice meal. But most Jews, even the ones who are disconnected from their tradition, they even come back to this. They read the story. They tell of the Exodus. On one level, maybe it has some significance to them, maybe not. On another level, the constant repetition, year after year, is something that has helped to frame the way people think. I don't think there's any explanation that accounts for the significant role of Jews in revolutionary movements, in movements for social progress, without accounting for this ritual that somehow enters people's consciousness of slavery and of the experience of bondage and of the importance of freedom. When you gather together and you tell this story with family, there's a sense of generations uniting around a table, but uniting around rituals. It binds them into a unity, not only with the people around the table, but it connects them to Jews around the world.
Creates the fruit of your ear.
One problem is that we often have forgotten what they're all about, and therefore we don't put passion and excitement and intelligence into them. We just do them by rote. Anything you do by rote is likely, not always, but likely, to become dead. So with those rituals, the question is a look and see. If I really get to the kishkas of this, to its guts, to the blood and energy in it, does it speak to me? Maybe it doesn't, but it might.
You know, I grew up in a large family, and we used to have, every Friday night, we would have dinner. I never understood that it was Shabbat dinner. It never struck me that we were celebrating the Sabbath. It was just Friday night dinner. Because we never did anything. I mean, yes, my mother lit the candles and did the prayer and so on, but I never understood what that meant. So I went to dinner at a friend's house, and there were a series of rituals. And at first I thought, oh, I can't wait to get through this so we can get to dinner. And everyone at the table had to say something great that happened to them that week. And my son said, well, the best thing was seeing Daddy. It was beautiful just to hear that and to hear the whole thing grounded me just for a few minutes. And when it got to be my turn and I found myself having to participate in the ceremony, I had a very strong reaction to it. And I realized that that's been missing for me, is ritual, meaningful ritual. I think for a long time, growing up, I had ritual without meaning. I went to shul, I had my bar mitzvah, but what did it mean? I never understood. And this small thing was huge in terms of meaning. And it's made me want to have more of that.
Shebechol halilot anu achlim chametzu matzah halayla hazeh kulo matzah halayla hazeh kulo matzah.
You recreate your mother and father's household every time you make a chag, a holiday happen in your own home. Every time you sing Havenu Shalom Aleichem, or at least every time I sing it, I can see my family sitting around the table. And I can see the crystal, the china, the white tablecloth, and I can feel this incredible connection, this feeling of continuity that is what we're talking about when we ask, is Judaism going to survive?
Each generation discovers for itself the symbolic meaning of Jewish time and ritual.
We may not be able to achieve perfection in all of our interpersonal relations, but ritual holds out at least the promise that you can do something right. And once you can do something right in the area of ritual, then it becomes possible to conceive of doing something right in a moral sphere as well. So ritual isn't merely an action that links one to God, but it also should open a world. It's a window that opens a world of possibilities of what I as a human being can become.
Join us for the final episode of Judaism, A Quest for Meaning next Sunday morning. But stay with us now for Landline.